Brilliant. Thank you, Jennifer. Really good introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. It's brilliant to be here today, and today marks actually quite a key milestone, which is why I wanted to pop along and launch this session, because what we're doing today is actually launching our first national construction framework. So a really good milestone, I think, in moving forward in this sector. I'm also joined for this introduction by Morag Angus, our new Head of Property and Construction and Scottish Government's Chief Surveyor, and I'll bring Morag in a bit. As the Director for Procurement and Property at Scottish Government, it really does actually give me, I'm really pleased that we've got today's event and that we are now moving forward with the National Civil Engineering Framework. Not only, as I mentioned, this is our first what I hope will be a series of national collaborative construction frameworks. So this is the first of what hopefully will be more to come down the line. But I'm also really pleased that we're developing this framework in collaboration with industry, including representatives from the Construction Scotland, from Scottish Futures Trust, from the framework bodies, public bodies. And we've already established a steering group made up of those members to guide the framework as we go on this journey. We're hoping it will be a transformational framework. We may not deliver on everything that we would ideally like at this point in time, but we're certainly hoping that it will shift the dial in a number of areas, and therefore be an enabler for the future ones to come. We're hoping this one in itself will be an enabler to drive innovation, promote digitisation, adopt modern methods of construction, including maximising off-site manufacture, increase transparency, particularly around publishing pipeline data and information of upcoming opportunities, and ensure prompt payment flows throughout the entire supply chain. So quite a few benefits we're hoping, or quite innovative shifts we're hoping to achieve. Anyone who's heard me speak before or watched any of my videos, you'll hear me talk about the power of procurement. How do we get the most benefit from the collective public spending in Scotland? I think public frameworks, particularly at a national level, are a fantastic way to try and harness this power of what is 13 billion procurement spend across Scotland, and construction totality is the biggest spend area by far. It gives public bodies a chance to procure essential goods and services in a way that really helps to promote a number of policy outcomes that we're trying to achieve, whether they're fair pay, fair work criteria for contractors and contract employees, deliver on community benefits. I've mentioned prompt payment throughout the supply chain, but also crucial at this time, really looking at how we build in environment and sustainability on our journey towards net zero. So just a few benefits for a public body. But I know the majority of this audience is a supply base. So why are frameworks good for business? Well, they reduce bureaucracy. I think they reduce the time, they reduce the cost of bidding for contracts. You've got standardisation of terms and conditions. I mentioned the pipeline before, so you'll be able to have that upfront visibility. We share best practice, and I think there's real enhanced opportunities, making it much easier for small organisations, third sector organisations, and supported business. So quite a good set of benefits for business and suppliers. I'm going to come back to what we're going to do throughout this session this afternoon. But before I do that, I also just want to take the opportunity to introduce Morag. I know many of you on this call probably already know Morag, but for those of you who don't, opportunity for Morag just to tell us a little bit about her role as Head of Property and Construction at Scottish Government. Over to you, Morag.
Thanks, Nick. So Head of Procurement, is there something that you haven't told me? Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to have the opportunity to be here and introduce myself a little bit today. Due to the pandemic and the way that we've had to work, it's one of the first public events that I've been able to participate in since I took up this new role, which is Head of Property and Construction for Scottish Government. The post's been newly established to bring professional expertise to the table, influencing built environment policy and delivery at senior civil service level. I'm going to tell you a little bit briefly about the significance of the framework, and as I do that, I'll touch on some of my aims and ambitions for the role. As Nick said before, today's event is really important because it's the first national construction framework for Scotland. We're pleased to have developed it in conjunction with both our contracting authorities and industry to use that power of procurement to strengthen our approaches and our behaviour in a way that's good for business. We want to drive fair working practices with contractors and employees paid no less than the real living wage. How can we attract new talent and develop careers in the sector without doing that? We want to redress gender pay inequalities, and fostering greater inclusion and diversity in the construction industry is a particular interest of mine, so you'll probably hear me talking about that and doing things about it in the future. We're going to be using key performance indicators that allow contractors to demonstrate they're working with us to achieve net zero emissions. We're going to be open and transparent by providing an indicative pipeline of projects that are split across a lotting structure, and they'll support you as suppliers to invest in modern methods and staff development, which will lead to a more sustainable construction industry in the country. And finally, this will demonstrate that we're listening to our communities and reflecting their needs and what we're trying to achieve together. The team and our industry representatives have worked really hard together to establish a cross-functional steering group, and we want to use this event to engage with you as part of the wider marketplace. Building those stronger links and understanding with suppliers throughout the supply chain, both for this particular framework and also more generally to support a strong, inclusive and successful construction industry, is what's going to help us make Scotland a better place to live and do business. To that extent, this framework reflects my ambitions for the job. I've got a number of years, over 25 years experience working in the built environment, so I know that you are the experts in what you do, and we can only improve construction practices and delivery if we work together. I'm going to hand back to Nick, who will explain a bit more about the event. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Morag. So I'm delighted at this session this afternoon that I think we've got over 100 organisations registered, and what's really good is, you know, the whole mixture, that inclusion, what Morag mentioned there. I think we've got suppliers who will probably be first tier, second tier, third tier, maybe even further down the supply chain. Contractors, SMEs, supported businesses, so real diverse group. We've got an impressive agenda coming up for this afternoon session. So shortly I'll hand over to Graham Porteous, who's the head of construction procurement policy here at Scottish Government, provide an overview. Then we'll take a closer look at what the upcoming framework is all about with Colin Bell and Brendan Little from our collaborative construction team, telling you a bit more detail into the framework, outlining the tendering process, so you'll know what to do and how to get involved. We'll then hear from different points of views, starting with what's it like from the client side of it, delivering large scale civil projects with some really great examples of what could be, you know, potential opportunities through the framework. So Jamie Kennedy from Transport Scotland will tell us more about that. And then we'll hear from the other side, what's it like to be a supplier, the supply shoes, and Robert Ogg from Robertson's Group, one of the UK's largest family-owned construction business, will give us a view of that contractor's perspective of working in this industry and sector. And then I'm really pleased that later on in the session we'll be here from Alistair Kerr from the British Association for Supported Employment, talking about the great range of goods and services that supported businesses can offer. And I'd ask all of you to have a think about where supported businesses can be used within your supply chains. And then finally, I think we'll wash up with the supply development programme, explaining particularly for SMEs, smaller organisations, the vast array of sort of training, support and help that's available to help organisations bid for public procurement. So a really good lineup for this afternoon. But actually, this is kind of only the start of the journey, really. After today, I think the team will take a bit of a period of reflection, take on board the feedback, the questions that you raised throughout today. We'll also be doing a series of working groups, more targeted working groups of industry to help pull together the requirements for the framework. The plan will then be to hold a further similar day like today, but actually once the contract notice has gone live, probably around the springtime, and then the team will be able to take you through the specific requirements. So keep an eye out for that as it down the line. So as I say, that's this is just the start. Much more to come before we get into the actual tendering process itself. Anyway, that's probably So I'd like to finish off by just thanking the Supplier Development Programme for hosting today's event. I mean, really professional day, and hopefully you'll all learn a lot. I'd really encourage you, as Jennifer said at the start, to raise questions, and the team will either answer them during the course at the end of the session, or get back to you in slower time. But before I finish, I'd like us also just to step back and have a look at the big picture. So we're going to shortly play a video from Mr. McKee, the Minister for Business, Trade, Tourism and Enterprise. And this is a video that really highlights the 4 outcomes that we try to achieve through public procurement here in Scotland. Maybe you've seen some of the promotional activity we've done on the 4 outcomes. These are what we're using in public procurement, which hopefully will be good for business and their employees, good for society, good for places and communities, and finally, open and connected. And I think it's that last one in particular that today's all about. This is an open supplier engagement event, really demonstrating that that open and connection firsthand. Anyway, with that, thank you very much for coming today. Hope you have a really good day or afternoon session. Learn plenty and look forward to engaging with you in the future. Thank you, and back to you, Jennifer.
Procurement plays a key part in delivering Scotland's economic strategy. And when we talk about the power of procurement, we're talking about how we can use our collective spending power to build an inclusive net zero economy. This sits at the very heart of what we do in procurement. And it's time for us to focus on the outcomes that we need to achieve. Purpose to go with the process. We need to use our spending power in a way that is good for businesses and their employees, good for society, good for places and community, and is open and connected. We need to work in a way that is mindful of our impact on society more generally, to deliver for communities, to engage with people, and to take local priorities into account. And of course, we need to consider what actions we can take now to address global environmental factors such as climate change. We need to be thinking about the if, what, and why we are buying something. We don't work in isolation, so this includes working with responsible suppliers and supply chains who share our commitments to the environment and to providing fair work for their staff. This includes paying the real living wage and no inappropriate use of zero-hour contracts. And they in turn expect fair treatment too. Fair and open access to contract opportunities and prompt payment for the work they do, wherever in our supply chains they may be. Through delivering on fairness, equality, jobs, local supply chains and local economic benefits, we are providing the solutions to the problems we face, not just today, but tomorrow and into the future. More than ever, we need to work together to do more for Scotland and keep striving to deliver those better outcomes. This is the power of procurement.
Okay, and now we're going to move on from the Minister's presentation there to Graham Porteous from Scottish Government. Graham, can you come off mute?
Yeah. Good afternoon. I'm Graham Porteous, Head of the Construction Procurement Policy Unit at the Scottish Government, and I'm the Senior Responsible Officer for the Civil Engineering Framework. As Nick mentioned, the need for national construction frameworks has been known for some considerable time. In more recent times, there has been significant and in-depth collaboration with both industry and public sector contracting authorities, which Colin and Brendan will touch on shortly. Working in collaboration with industry, public bodies and the Scottish Government, we reached agreement last month over the terms of reference for the Joint Steering Group for the Civil Engineering Framework. Soon thereafter, we published a prior information notice and the desire to have an open supplier meeting to initiate the engagement with the marketplace, which is crucial. It's great to see such a wide range of contractors and suppliers here today, many names I know and some I remember well. My vision for the Civil Engineering Framework is relatively simple, and I want us all to maximise the power of procurement, as we heard from Mr. McKee. We need a framework which public bodies want to use and that contractors want to be a part of. The Framework Steering Group, which I mentioned earlier, has membership which comprises representatives from industry, public bodies and Scottish Government, and will be responsible for the delivery of the framework, which means they will endeavour to achieve the points noted in the bullets on the slide. The benefits of a framework include the facilitation of longer-term relationships with repeated work opportunities. A pipeline of work being identified allows for longer-term planning of projects and programmes. Over my career, I've been through several boom and burst cycles, and I would like to see a steady programme of work coming forward. We have identified a series of lots through which work can be procured, covering both geographic and monetary spread, and we would intend to maximise the opportunities for SMEs. Prompt payment throughout the supply chain is a necessity, and the framework will contain a requirement to monitor this. Project bank accounts, which are very effective, will be required for projects in excess of £5 million. The framework needs to have terms and conditions which are suitable to both public bodies and contractors, and be standard regardless of the public body calling off or the contractor being awarded the work. The terms and conditions will utilise NEC 4 as its base, and a working group reporting to the steering group will be charged with reaching a consensus on this topic. The working group will also need to consider risk transfer, which needs to move away from the usual everything to the contractor to a more considered and equitable position where responsibility sits with those best placed to handle such. We want to make greater use of digitisation and, wherever suitable, make better use of modern methods of construction. This aspect is perhaps more suited to building projects, but we need to be ambitious and explore the opportunities available to civil engineering projects. The framework needs to be quick and easy to use in order for public bodies to call off contractors, which in turn will facilitate projects getting on the ground as quickly as possible. The framework contract award process will focus more on qualitative and sustainable outcomes, and there will be another working group looking into this aspect. Please be under no illusion, we need to move away from the misconception that submitting a low price will win work. Nobody benefits in such a situation. The use of the graduated pricing mechanism, coupled with the move for the framework to a 70 quality 30 price scenario, assists in this aim. Right from the start, we have collectively been setting out to develop what we sought as a gold standard framework, and input from our industry colleagues provided us with knowledge from around the UK, helping us to articulate what different levels from bronze to gold would look like. A gold standard remains our ambition. We have recently seen the production of a very useful independent piece of work carried out on behalf of UK Cabinet Office, Constructing the Gold Standard in Construction Frameworks by Professor David Mosey. We welcome this as it will help us in the steering group continue to refine what is deliverable. Many of the recommendations in the document map well to the objectives we already have for the Scottish Government's Civil Engineering Framework. And with that, I'll hand over to Colin.
Thank you, Graham. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Colin Bell, and I am a Senior Procurement Manager at the Scottish Government. I head up the collaborative construction team, and I'm responsible for delivering the procurement aspects of our construction frameworks, which includes civil engineering. I will now pass you over to Brendan, who will take you through our first leg of our joint presentation.
Thank you, Colin, and good afternoon. My name is Brendan Little, and I am a Portfolio Manager in the collaborative construction team with Colin. This slide provides a summary of the main areas of interest for our civils framework and the procurement exercise we are about to undertake. Colin and I will discuss these main areas in the following slides before we pass you on to Jamie Kennedy and Robert Locke. Colin and I will cover background, why we started our journey, collaborative partners, who they are, scope, what is included relative to types of projects and Scottish Government initiatives, lots and limiting of awards, what they are, how they are separated, and how we intend to lock limit at award, pipeline, why it's important, what we have collected to date, and what we are doing to verify the data just now to enhance this. Procurement, what are the main elements? collaborative working groups with industry. How are we engaging with, and what our next steps are? Indicative timetable, what the key activities are, and the current indicative target dates. Next slide, please. The 2013 review of Scottish public sector procurement and construction considered the entire public sector and affordable housing sector construction procurement arrangements in Scotland and made arrangements to support improvements in efficiency, delivery and sustainability of construction procurement. Following this report, and just prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, Scottish Government became aware of an increasing appetite stemming from both public and private bodies for the establishment of a portfolio of core Scottish Government construction frameworks to ensure that contract rates are both compliant with the Public Contracts Scotland Regulations 2015 and embrace Scottish Government's agenda for economic, environmental and social sustainability. To begin to achieve this, the team entered into a period of dialogue with industry via Construction Scotland, with Scottish Futures Trust and via our already established collaborative ways of working network with our 4 centres of expertise, covering central government, local government, education and health. To lay the foundations for discussions on the merits of existing frameworks and what core Scottish Government's framework should look like, we conducted a request for information, a RFI exercise, with all central government organisations, including Transport Scotland and Scottish Futures Trust, all 32 local authority councils, and Scotland Excel, APOC and NHS National Services Scotland. In addition, we conducted a separate RFI exercise with industry through Construction Scotland. Both RFI exercises contain separate question sets, one set focused on construction in general and one set focused specifically on civil engineering. The RFI exercises reaffirmed the desire for national construction frameworks in Scotland. This RFI activity also ensured that all Scottish public sector bodies and industry had the opportunity to help shape and influence our portfolio of construction activity from the beginning, and helped us to decide to run with a civils framework as the first procurement exercise from our construction portfolio. Next slide, please. Our ways of working methods, agreed with our 4 centres of expertise, ensures we identify our collaborative partners by, in the first instance, inviting all potential framework bodies to an overarching national portfolio forum for intended frameworks. In this instance, a portfolio for construction frameworks. Using this forum, we sought volunteers to form a user intelligence group. This slide lists the framework public bodies who volunteered and who make up our user intelligence groups for civils. This slide also lists the framework public bodies who have provided pipeline forecast data to Scottish Futures Trust. Next slide, please. It is proposed that our civils framework will provide a route to market for all Scottish public bodies to consider for projects up to a value of £80 million. All types of civil engineering works can be called off from the framework. There are no exclusions. The specification does differentiate between general, including design of road construction, road maintenance, passenger transport, infrastructure and quarrying, and specialist, including construction and repair of road and footbridges, maintenance and refurbishment of bridges and demolition of bridges. This separation is also evident in our lotting structure. A strong positive for using our civils framework is that the scope includes the latest and most up-to-date approach to Scottish Government initiatives, which includes sustainability, including contributing to net zero ambitions, use of sustainable materials and waste management, community benefits, including use of local resources skills development in local communities, social value, and contributing to local economic growth. Fair work, including adoption of Fair Work First policy throughout supply chains, including paying the real living wage, and prompt payment throughout the supply chain. Thank you, and I'll now pass you over to Colin.
Thank you, Brendan. Can we have the next slide, please, Jennifer? Delegates, my first slide illustrates the proposed lotting structure for the civils framework. As you can see, we have both national and regional lots, each with a range of values and a split between general and specialist civil engineering. The structure is very much aimed at trying to maximise interest across the entire supply chain, from Tier 1 contractors through to SMEs, whilst having the appropriate levels of competition and capacity. We have a total of 17 individual lots, ranging in value from below 1 million in Lot 6, down the bottom, and up to 80 million in Lot 1B, and a geographical lot specifically for the Shetland Islands. The boundaries for the regional lots are on the next slide. We envisage that main contractors will be more interested in the medium to high value lots and hope SMEs will be interested in medium to lower value lots. The slide details the proposed number of suppliers we envisage for each lot, which differs per lot. We also intend to limit the number of frameworks any contractor can be awarded to ensure they are not successful on all the lots. This is really important for the lower value lots. Should contractors only be successful on a single lot, based on this structure, we would have 82 different suppliers. This number is outlined in the bottom right-hand corner of the slide. However, this outcome does appear unlikely. Next slide, please, Jennifer. This slide supplements the lotting structure by stating and visually representing the regional splits for the Highlands and Islands, North East, South East, South West, and the Shetland Islands and Orkney Islands. It's based on the 32 local council boundary lines. Also, my apologies in advance as the map does not truly reflect Shetland's and Orkney's proximity to the mainland. Next slide, please, Jennifer. This slide summarises the indicative pipeline for civils for the next 4 years. We continue to work collaboratively with the Scottish Futures Trust and utilise their construction pipeline forecast tool to collect and review pipeline data from framework public bodies, which we are currently validating. The pipeline is and will continue to be a moving feast. We do aim to provide refreshed pipeline data when we publish the contract notice. There is always the caveat that the pipeline is without commitment and subject to change. A pipeline by definition is indicative. We will, however, strive to provide the most accurate data we can and share this information on a regular basis. The slide also states the planned number of projects across each of the 17 lots for the 4 years. As you can see, some of the lots have numerous projects, whereas some only have 1 or 2. This is a reason that we're validating the pipeline information. We want to have and review and combine, apologies, we may have to review and combine some of the lots and amend the number of suppliers per lot. We are keen to ensure for all concerned parties that we have the right number of suppliers for each lot, not too many and not too few. Next slide, please, Jennifer. This slide provides the key elements of the procurement activity for civils. At the time, our RFI exercise indicated a strong preference for a straight 4-year framework duration. The estimated value of this framework is anticipated to be around 600 million over the 4-year term, which you can see broadly ties in with the current pipeline data we have. The framework terms and conditions will be based on NEC 4, as will the subsequent call-off contracts, which will include for long contract, short contract, term contract, and term short contract. Our procurement exercise will use a restricted procedure and will be conducted via the PCST portal. We will issue a contract notice, and interested parties will be able to express their interest in any of the lots by completing and submitting the standard procurement document, previously known as the PQQ, for us to evaluate. We will then issue the ITT to shortlisted bidders for each lot. Following evaluation of the tenders, we'll then apply lot limiting if necessary, and award frameworks to successful tenderers, ensuring contractors don't want more lots than is stated in the ITT. Each of the 17 lots will be evaluated individually. The evaluation criteria will be 70% quality and 30% price. We will award frameworks on the basis of the most economically advantageous tender, the combination of both price and quality. Within the pricing evaluation, we will use a graduated pricing model. With this, the lowest price is awarded the highest score. The reduction of points for having a higher bid is, however, gradual. The aim of the model is to encourage sustainable prices from all bidders. The specific graduate pricing module for civils remains in development. The last point outlines that at this stage, the default position is that contracts will be mini-competed under the framework, but we need to ensure we strike the right balance with the mini-comp process to keep it as lean as possible while ensuring it's fit for purpose. Next slide, please, Jennifer. Starting from next month, we will be initiating 4 individual working groups in collaboration with industry via Construction Scotland and framework public bodies. We have price to discuss the mechanism for the graduated pricing model and the various elements that will form the commercial evaluation. We have quality, how best to measure quality. Performance management, identifying the key elements we need to collect and how they can help us improve future performance for the benefit of the client, industry, users, and therefore the public. And lastly, terms and conditions to agree a set and sets of conditions of contract. Next slide, please, Jennifer. This slide indicates a best case scenario timetable for the procurement activity. It is ambitious. We are having this event prior to publishing the contract notice to gain the initial views of the marketplace. It would be our intention to hold a similar event following the publication of the contract notice to outline the requirements therein, as Nick touched on earlier. The 4 key events and dates are contract notice due to be published in March 2022, issuing the ITT to shortlisted bidders in May 2022, tender responses due back in June 2022, and the framework award in September 2022. Our contract notice will contain updated information, as will the ITT. Also, should these indicative dates change, we will provide further information via the PCS portal. Next slide, please, Jennifer. Hopefully this final slide does what it says in the tin and provides a useful summary of the key highlights Brendan and I have covered today. If I can just pick out a couple of points. Frameworks can be beneficial to all parties, and we need to ensure we make this happen for both the industry and the contracting authorities. And also, we're really keen to have the right balance of lots and the number of suppliers on each lot to benefit everyone. On behalf of Brendan and I, thank you.
Thanks. Now it's full screen, and that's great. Take it away.
Okay, thank you. My name is Jamie Kennedy. I work for Transport Scotland. My permanent role is actually Head of Contracts, which supports the Major Projects Directorate. But I'm temporarily sort of working for Roads Directorate, where I'm the sort of operating company manager, which is looking after network maintenance contracts as well. So I'm just going to give a bit of a sort of feedback of who Transport Scotland are, the types of projects that we've been doing over the last few years, and the types of projects we expect to take through this framework agreement, along with some of our approaches to procurement and contracts and how we've been taking things forward over the past few years. So this will work. get on to the next slide. So who are we? Transport Scotland is the national transport agency for Scotland. From air routes to zebra crossings, we seek to deliver safe, efficient, cost-effective, sustainable transport systems to benefit Scotland. There are 8 directorates within Transport Scotland, from aviation, bus accessibility, low carbon economy, to major projects, which is where I used to be, to now roads, which is where I am just now, to rail, and to transport strategy and analysis. Major projects and roads are the 2 that predominantly deal with roads and road maintenance. Major projects delivering major schemes, and Roads Directorate delivering major bridgeworks, minor improvement and maintenance schemes, while also maintaining the network. Major projects is responsible for the design, development, promotion and procurement and construction of the motorway and trunk road programme, including past projects like the Forest Replacement Crossing. During Transport Scotland's first decade, a construction spend of 2.81 billion, which was investment in new and upgraded roads delivered across Scotland by the Directorate. Typical schemes that have happened of recent through major projects. Going back to 2019, the A737 Dalry bypass was opened, along with the Den realignment. More recent schemes has been Berriedale Braes up the north on the A9, and A9 Julian, which recently opened, which was Lunkerty Pass of Burnham, which was a very good project. Ones that are due to open fairly soon is the A77 Mibble bypass, which is due to open imminently, and the A9 to A96 Horrigan Junction improvement, which is due to open in March 2022. So these are sort of some of the schemes that sort of sit within the values of under 80 million, which we would hope to take these sort of schemes through the framework agreement. Roads Directorate. Roads Directorate is responsible for carrying out the management, maintenance and operation of the trunk roads in Scotland, and the coordination of response to emergencies affecting transport. The trunk road network comprises of around 3,500 kilometres of road, and is the largest asset Scottish ministers own. £21 billion worth of net gross asset value. The investment hierarchy is actually starting to move towards maintaining the asset and a shift away from new build. So generally there's, I'm sure many of you have heard, looking after what we've got as opposed to building new, which is the same approach being sort of taken forward in our road network. Most trunk roads works and services are delivered through third parties, particularly through contractors, consultants and operating companies, the 4 operating companies. Major bridge works have recently taken place or recently been delivered through Roads Directorate. There are a number here. You can see them all listed in front of you, and a number of yes, very difficult Gaelic names to pronounce, which I'll try to avoid. But there's things like the A82 Clifton Culvert replacement, A702 Locker Briggs Wall replacement, A90 Forth Bridge Expansion Joint replacement. So there's a number of schemes that are sort of sitting around about the sort of 1.5 million to 5 million mark, and very good schemes to be taken forward. Just a sort of snapshot, the sort of pictures of these types of schemes. So it's not just the major projects that Transport Scotland will be able to take forward to these frameworks. It is the sort of smaller sort of maintenance works that we will be taking forward or looking to put through. We see this as a sort of ideal opportunity, this framework, to reduce procurement timescales and achieve requirements of our programme. Procurement of works, contracts and consultancy services supports delivery of the agency's programme of major new trunk road projects. These contracts are delivered through competitive tender in accordance with EU and UK procurement rules. Within Transport Scotland, projects valued at over 1.5 million are referred to as major projects, Such projects are usually procured using the design and build contract. The private finance form of contract is used for certain very large projects which have been assessed for their suitability for delivery by this procurement route. Schemes under the Roads Directorate, classified as of right contracts, are dictated by thresholds. So these are set at 1.5 million for bridges, subcontracts, and 1 million for other roads, etc. works. These schemes are undertaken either directly by or subcontracted through our operating companies, Bayer and Amy. However, there are a number of works contracts carried out through the Roads Directorate above these values, in particular under major Bridgeworks contracts, programme and special project works contracts. So projects in the pipeline. Within major projects, there's a number of schemes being taken forward. This is just a snapshot of a few of the schemes that potentially could go through the framework in the next 4 years. So we have the A9, A96 Inchy-Smithton scheme, which is a single carriageway road connecting Inchy and Smithton and Inverness. That's currently going through the statutory processes. Similarly, we have Lawrence Kirk Junction Improvement Scheme, which is a grade separated junction on the A90 at Lawrence Kirk, which is similarly going through statutory processes. There's the Brecon Bypass, which is a long-standing issue with concrete repairs. We are still trying to proceed with concrete repairs, although we are potentially, that could be confirmed as being taken forward as a new project to replace the existing carriageway surface. And then recently, some of you will be aware that STPR2 was recently published, and that considers the transport needs of Scotland and people's communities and examines active travel and trunk nodes as well as passenger freight across access to major schemes. We've already within major projects, they've recently set up a team called Road Space Reallocation, which is looking at schemes taking forward and how we can better use our road space for more active travel alternatives. Major bridge works looking to be taken forward over the next sort of 4 years, 4 to 5 years. We've got the A830 Schleitak rail bridge replacement with an estimated construction value of 2.5 to 3 million. We've got the M8 Woodside permanent repairs with an estimated construction value of 10 to 15 million. We've got the M8 Junction 25, Junction 25A bridge refurbishments. We've got the M8 Bridges strategy, which is potentially 10 to 15 years worth of bridge refurbishment and strengthening work. And that's looking at the whole M8 corridor with a total value of a sort of 170 to 270 million, which is likely to sort of be broken down into different chunks. And we've got the M74 Junction 6 refurbishment, which is estimated value of 1.5 million. We have got a quite comprehensive major bridge works contract programme, which is listed here. And that sets out the sort of schemes that are taking place in sort of 23, 24, 25, which would be very keen to take through the framework, and it's giving you the estimated minimum amount up to the maximum amount, and things like Keswick Bridge fender replacement, Keswick Bridge painting, Connaught Bridge deck repainting, bridge deck replacement at Connaught Bridge as well. So there's a number of good schemes that we at Transport Scotland would be keen to take through this framework. TS approach to conditions of contract. I'm sure many of people attending today's presentation will know that Transport Scotland have generally adopted a bespoke set of terms and conditions. Yes, we still, this is based on ICE 5th conditions of contract, which is well known and understood by our domestic contractors, but not so much by contractors out with the UK. The contract is based on the structure and style of ICE conditions of contract with bespoke amendments to reflect TS's particular requirement and risk allocation, Scottish Government TS and TS policy, and amendments to reflect Scots law. The ICE conditions of contract still remain popularity with the civil engineering industry, although we are seeing wanting to see a bit more shift away from the ICE conditions of contract. Certainly on the force replacement crossing, Transport Scotland adopted FIDIC conditions of contract, which was the FIDIC Silver Book. This was due to its familiarity and popularity with international contractors. Although similar to the approach adopted by IC Fifth, amendments were required to reflect particular requirements in risk allocation. As you're aware, the NEC conditions of contract are known for adopting a more partnering approach between client and contractor, and has become the preferred conditions of contract by the UK Institution of Civil Engineers. The NEC conditions of contract has not commonly been used by Transport Scotland, although we did test it and we still continue to use it through the A9 Julian team, where we adopted it for the A9 Advanced Works Framework Agreement. And certainly within my previous team, or my permanent team, we've been using it for a number of our professional services contracts. So it's becoming something that's quite used by the major projects team. Transport Scotland are keen to develop the use of this form of contract, and we certainly see the new civils framework as an ideal opportunity to introduce it on our major projects. Similarly, the TS approach to procurement and contracts, we have been very proactive, Transport Scotland, with a number of new processes in trying to adopt new policy and the way Scottish Government are wanting things to be taken forward. Things like quality price ratios. On 5-10 years ago, we were very much, quality was down at 5% even in some cases, and it was predominantly price. However, we're starting to shift away from that, with most recent schemes adopting a sort of 30-70 quality price, placing a greater emphasis on quality. Certainly with our bridges contracts, they've gone down to 40-60, which is more in line with the approach being required. Abnormally low tenders we have adopted on Lunketed to Burnham was the first contract we used the graduated price scoring, which proved fairly successful, ensuring a focus moves away from price and more on quality. Similarly, selection criteria, we're constantly looking at constant improvement, and then recently we've to ensure contractors have the requisite technical and professional ability and financial and economic standards are taken through our contracts. Transport Scotland are represented in a number of major forums relating to fair work, retention, climate change and community benefits, ensuring our procurements and contracts align with current policy. Certainly during COVID and Brexit, Transport Scotland proactively engaged with contractors during COVID-19 and have worked across government and industry to address material and supply issues which have been affecting the industry over the last couple of years. So really the next step is we see the National SG Civils Framework as continued commitment to support the industry. And thank you.
Excellent. Well, hello and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Robert Hogg, and I've been involved off and on for the best part of 24 months with the proposed Scottish Government Civils Framework offering. Myself and two other industry colleagues now sit on the Civils Framework Steering Group and are there to put forward what we believe to be an industry viewpoint on how the framework should be structured and also how it should operate. For the last 3 years, I've been in the role of National Frameworks Director with the Robertson Group, which has involved the management and operation of over 35 different framework mechanisms. Therefore, I do have a good understanding of what works well and doesn't with regards to frameworks. I also have over 30 years industry experience, predominantly with Tier 1 contractors, and that's been on the operational side. My colleagues on the steering group are John Guild and David MacDonald. John is Project Director with Galliford Try and has an excess of 35 years experience spanning pre-construction, early contractor involvement and project delivery on medium to, I would say, very large schemes. David is Director and shareholder with Global Infrastructure, and he also has 30 years experience in the industry, and that includes involvement with Scottish Water and SSE frameworks. We are involved to represent probably the majority of individuals on this call. Therefore, if you have any key asks, then please contact one of us directly, and we can put whatever that ask is forward for consideration. So, what do we believe the purpose of the framework offering is? Well, it's to improve the current procurement process of public infrastructure projects in Scotland through the use of a well-structured framework. And that's the key to me, a well-structured framework. That is what we need. And if we do that, the goal is to significantly improve value for money whilst enabling inclusive growth, ensuring that the capital expenditure committed in Scotland benefits the people and also the economy of Scotland. The other presenters have touched on many of the points I'm going to mention already, but I thought it worthy of mentioning them again from an industry perspective, and also to highlight some of the many considerations that have been discussed to date. So, what does good look like with regards to a framework? Firstly, there has to be a strong pipeline. No contractor wants to go to the expense of getting on a framework and realise it's an empty box when you get there. So there needs to be a visible pipeline. This needs to be real, with associated timelines, and be updated on a regular basis, so that everyone has visibility and they can plan ahead with regards to resources. Contractually, the framework needs to be easy to use, not complex, overly procedural. And this point isn't only for the contractor. If it's a clunky, unfriendly mechanism, it will be a turn-off for the contracting authorities as well. So ease of use is key. Risk. This needs to be properly assessed and allocated on a project-by-project basis. And the best way we believe to assess and allocate risk is by the use of early contractor involvement form of contracts, which we would push for wherever practicable. Fair payment. This is a given to ensure that the supply chain are paid, not just tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, but all the way through. And that needs to be within an agreed time frame. But also that the contracting authorities are time bound to pay the contracting entities, i.e. the contractors. This works both ways. And the use of quantifiable KPIs. These are KPIs that are demonstrable, but also meaningful, and not just a tick box exercise. Something that we can benchmark against to show improvements and also demonstrate all the added value that these contracts should bring. Lotting structure. This has been mentioned previously again, and the key deliverables here are for it to be geographically split to ensure project delivery is possible throughout all of Scotland, whilst making it as inclusive as possible for contractors of all sizes to participate. Limited spaces on each lot to ensure that once on the framework, opportunities should be available for all, pipeline dependent of course, and also a limit on the number of lots that a single contractor can apply for. This is to ensure that contractors focus on where they can deliver best, this being their chosen geography and value, but it also means there will be more contracting places available on the framework. And this should also encourage localism. With regards to evaluation, the scoring mechanism needs to be heavily in favour of quality, and this is not only to get on the framework, but also for the opportunities that arise through it. This is to ensure, or to try and avoid the race to the bottom has been touched on already, that currently exists in the marketplace, and assist in appointing the best placed contractor to carry out the works. Questions and commercial submissions should be proportional to the size or complexity of the planned works. This is to avoid the need for lengthy and complex submissions when the proposed works do not justify this, or actually make sure that lengthy, complex submissions are required if the works do require that. And we are looking for the ability for the tendering pricing mechanism to be available for change should a better offering or mechanism become available and Scottish Government policies permit. This is so that we do not have to wait 4 years until the next iteration should policy change allow. An extremely important part of a well-run framework is its overall management processes and interaction that happens with contractors, customers, supply chain, and the numerous industry bodies. Key to this is simplicity. As I touched on earlier, simple processes will make it an attractive route to market for all parties. A joined up, shared and in time embedded first-class safety culture, retention-free. This would of course mean a greater focus on defect-free projects at handover. Good marketing and promotion of the framework to ensure it is kept in the spotlight. All parties are aware of it and know how to use it. Also that all added value and initiatives that are delivered are publicised and celebrated. Engagement. This is required at all levels on both the contracting and customer side. And through this engagement, the sharing of knowledge can be embraced with specific focus groups established to deal with current issues or specifics. For example, innovation and the net zero carbon agenda, which is only going to grow in size and scale. Supply chain engagement is making sure that opportunities are visible throughout the supply chain. For example, in larger schemes, the running of supply chain engagement sessions to ensure that local SMEs and contractors have an opportunity to get involved. And finally, through these engagement activities, there could be real opportunities to share best practice and other initiatives. So that is what we have put forward or put across as requirements for an industry best practice framework. However, there are still key activities that need to be finalised and worked through. And to do this, 4 working groups have been established. These groups will delve deeper into the framework mechanics, and these groups have been split as follows. Quality, looking at both the framework and project deliverables. As I mentioned before, we want any evaluation process to be heavily weighted in favour of quality, and not only to secure a place on the framework, but also when securing projects once on the framework. Also, the technical aspects need to be relevant to lot size or project complexity. Price, again, looking for consistency of mechanism and evaluation at both the framework and project level. T's and C's, we have proposed the use of the NEC form of contract, unamended at framework level, with the specifics to be dealt with on a project-by-project basis. And performance management, which will be looking at what should be measured to assess performance at the framework, project and contractor level. If anyone has anything that they would like raised at these working groups, please get in touch with myself, David or John, and we can take these forward. And finally, as I stated at the start, I'll finish with a vision that we should all be trying to achieve, and that is to create a final proposal that can provide a holistic solution which balances the diverse requirements of public sector clients and the range of organisations who deliver civil engineering works within Scotland. If the objectives are achieved, it will secure a sustainable future for Scottish-based civil contractors of all sizes and not only retain key skills and talent, but it will create opportunities for these to grow. Thank you.
Good afternoon. A sincere note of thanks to Nick and Colin for the opportunity to come along today to your event to talk about sustainable procurement construction frameworks and how Scotland supported businesses can support you with that ambition going forward. My name is Alistair Kerr and I'm Director and Chair of the British Association for Supported Employment, and we are the trade body that represents supported businesses not only in Scotland but across the UK. So if you look at the second slide, so a wee bit about base, it tells you there what we're involved in, and the real core purpose is to support and promote and develop the principles and provision of supported employment, enabling and supporting disabled and disadvantaged people to realise individual goals and ambitions, be it sustained employment, training skills, education, volunteering. And the policy intent that we use to develop those opportunities is the Scottish Government's Sustainable Procurement Duty, which many of you will be familiar with. So a little bit of background about the base network and relationship with central government procurement and indeed Scottish Government dates back to about 2008. Where we first came together to look at the art of the possible about creating opportunities under these types of provisions, policies or frameworks. So if you see there, with the First Minister back in 2012, we came together with central government procurement, the First Minister and clearly obviously the base network, and we launched a group called the Scottish Government Supported Business Advisory Group, which meets every quarter, which has the heads of public procurement or the representatives around the table, and they talk about engagement and spend and procurement plans, ensuring how the sustainable procurement duty can create opportunities, obviously at an operational level. To run parallel with that, we also launched a National Supported Business Framework, and that had 4 lots attached to it, and that was carried out by central government procurement, and those 4 lots are still in operation today. They're currently being reviewed for a refreshed launch post December 2022. We also supported the Scottish Government's Central Government Procurement Team round about the two-part sustainability test as part of the duty to ensure that we try and attract as many organisations, SMEs, social firms, social enterprises to be involved in these types of activities. Other national supported business frameworks include work with central government, NHS National Procurement and Scotland Excel. And they again are frameworks that we work with senior commissioners with to try and develop new frameworks and new innovative ways of bringing the supported businesses to the market. One of the most recent areas that we've been involved in was working with the new Social Security Scotland Directorate on the launch of the first corporate procurement strategy, and which we were more than happy to do. And they have embedded the base network in Scotland supported businesses through that strategy, and indeed have made a number of high profile awards to Scotland supported businesses through reserved lots, quick quotes or direct awards. On a kind of UK scale, we are also part of the UK Government Supported Business Steering Group, which is obviously based in London, and that Scotland is quite far in advance under duties like sustainable procurement than the rest of the UK, and they're looking at ways where they can replicate and develop some of the models that have been in operation in Scotland for the best part of 8 to 10 years. So, supported businesses. What is a supported business? Supported businesses are enterprise where the main social aim is to integrate disabled and disadvantaged people socially and professionally. Workforce must be at least 30% disabled or disadvantaged. Now that can be a challenge for all, because how do you define disadvantaged? And I think the last 2 years of COVID, and clearly we're not out of that yet, but the last 2 years of COVID have really polarised and focused politicians' thoughts to the whole social and economic recovery. And this is where the sustainable procurement duty and other policies can provide opportunities for disabled people. Some of the work, and we'll touch on that in the slides to come, but some of the work we do behind the scenes, we work with commissioners and suppliers, re-embedding supported businesses either pre or post the ITT stage, which is crucial. BASE can support suppliers with embedding supported businesses in procurement timetables and supply chains, and I'll come to that a wee bit later on. And every supported business is endorsed by BASE Scotland, and due diligence has been carried out, so you will know that any organisation we put forward to be onboarded into your supply chains, for example, would stand any scrutiny under the sustainable procurement duty of the two-part test that Scottish Government Procurement operate. On this slide, that's an example of some of the goods and services that the supported businesses in Scotland currently have in the marketplace. But if I can draw your attention to the very first part, catering academies, construction industry. So to give you a kind of an idea of some of the modelling, innovative modelling that's currently ongoing, Scottish Prison Service Procurement commissioned a large-scale rebuild of the women's facility at Clorton Vale, and the successful bidder there was a Tier 1 construction company called Morrison Construction, and they then formed a partnership with the BASE network, and the idea there was to onboard supported businesses with Morrison Construction. And as obviously Morrison Construction tender for contracts, then the BASE network, i.e. Scotland supported businesses, are part of that tender process, and if they're successful, then goods and services clearly filter down to the supply chain of which the supported businesses are members. The model at Clorton Vale, Morrison Construction then commissioned with a supported business called Community Focus Scotland, who primarily focus on food poverty and supported employment. And they established a catering academy within the construction site. So obviously, as you know, the The construction staff obviously need to be fed and watered every day, and Community Focus Scotland does that on a daily basis, and according to Morrison Construction does it very well. And they also then have catering academies that can be offered out to, for example, the people in the care of Scottish Prison Service within Cottonville itself. They offer a number of qualifications, but probably more importantly, they create employment opportunities for disabled and disadvantaged people as part of that. And one of the outputs, as I mentioned there, was Morrison Construction coming together with the base network to set up a group called the Supported Procurement Group. And that group meets every 8 weeks. And they look at procurement opportunities come up under public sector and look at the best fit with the supported businesses in their supply chain. And then that is an evidence-based model of the power of procurement that Nick mentioned earlier, i.e. SPS commission, Tier 1 construction company wins the contract, they embed supported businesses into the supply chain offer, they win contracts from Morrison Construction or its supply chain partners. They produce the goods and services, and in turn those supported businesses protect the disabled workers' jobs, but also create a foundation to create more jobs. So it's a fantastic example of how the power of procurement does work. Supported employment qualifications, training, education and skills services are also additional areas that the base network offer to disabled and disadvantaged people, and they utilise the sustainable procurement duty to achieve this. So on a broader stage, BASE is a key stakeholder to facilitating the understanding of the supported business network across Scotland. We work with central government procurement, Scotland Excel, NH National Procurement, Transport Scotland, Scottish Prison Service and APUC. And that's all tied into a group called the Supported Business Steering Group that I mentioned earlier. We work on policy with government, we look at pre-ITT development of offers, we look at post-ITT awards and frameworks. Probably the preference is obviously for the pre-ITT work, because as long as it's written into the contract, then it's easy to manage and administer. It becomes a bit more vague if the opportunities are thought of post-awards, where it makes it more difficult for suppliers to accommodate this type of duty. We've built and started to build a bigger network within the private sector, within the construction industry, and obviously looking at the whole infrastructure agenda for Scotland going forward. So they're all positive things.
Alistair, I'm just going to ask you to wrap up on your last slide here.
Yes.
To keep to time, please.
Yep, we'll do. And yep, and finally, and probably most importantly, we provide hope and not false expectation for people across Scotland who want to work and contribute, but due to health, clinical or personal circumstances require a supported environment to understand each person's unique health condition and circumstances. The sustainable procurement duties are one enabler to support this ambition. So by you doing your day job, you can be part of this timely journey and change a disabled persons for life and the better at the time of our greatest need. Thank you.
That was so helpful, Alistair, and thank you so much for your...
Good afternoon, I'm Julian Cameron, the Programme Manager at the Supplier Development Programme, and I'm delighted to talk you through the services that STP can offer to support you in this project. So Nick Ford talked about the power of procurement, and very much we see how STP works with bodies is about the power of procurement. We support all 32 local authorities and a number of Scottish other public bodies on delivering the sustainable procurement duty. So enabling the power of procurement to really enact and help small businesses engage with the public sector. And we do that through a number of ways of making sure that we have large scale meet the buyers. We have other opportunities where suppliers can engage with buyers and where buyers can then engage with the local marketplace. It's really important for us to make sure there's signposting at both post and pre-tender opportunities around that. As I said, all 32 local authorities in Scotland, so we are a national service. And we also have a number of other public bodies that are also members of us. And you will see on there the likes of Hub East Central Scotland, who recently joined STP as well, to benefit of how they can open up their supply chain, engage small businesses and offer them support on how to tender. So what do we actually do and what do we offer for suppliers? Well, we provide an independent free resource for tender support, and we do that through a whole range of tender training courses. So we have everything for anyone, from the absolute basics of how to tender through to more advanced topics, looking at community benefits, looking at pricing, scoring and weighting, and also at the policy documents that are required as part of the tender process. We have a whole range of services available online through our website, and we have contacts in each of the councils. We have an online jargon buster, as you know. Procurement is full of acronyms, and so it's a very helpful little document to find out what they all mean. We have a series of online videos and guides that are available for suppliers to go in and see some of our Meet the Buyer events and some of the presentations we've already done, and they're really useful for suppliers to dip in and out of. We provide suppliers with access to buyers through our Meet the Buyer type events, and our next large-scale event will be our Meet the Buyer in the summer, which is on the 15th of June, and will be a virtual event again this year. We also provide a range of procurement workshops and talking tender webinars, where we introduce a public body and you can find out how you do business with them, and there's always a number of them on our calendar. More and more, throughout the pandemic, we have been delivering focused training aligned to a particular contract opportunity. So when there is an actual contract and the buyer is wishing to engage small local businesses and understand what the ask is in the contract, and then provide some tender training that will help them get through the tender process and apply for the contract. We recently launched our e-learning modules, providing 24/7 on-demand access. Some of our most popular modules are the quick quote process and understanding how you do that. So these modules are little 15-minute bite-sized sessions that you can log onto the website and you can use at any point, offering you a refresher if you've not already been in our courses, for a taster of how you might want to go into more of our courses. The programme offers a help desk for general questions, and we can take inquiries through either our website or you can email us to ask about general questions about procurement, about support and about services that are coming up. If you're signed up to our programme, you'll also receive our monthly newsletter, which will highlight all the projects we're working on, the up and coming events and tender training. And we're very proactive in social media, alerting about new opportunities and projects. And we also offer a paid corporate membership for larger contractors. So what does that really look like? So whether you're a primary contractor or a small business, we have a plan to support you. We repeat these steps as and when you need it. So when you're actually a primary contractor and need to identify new suppliers for your supply chain or engage local businesses for a particular project, STP can support you in that. There are a range of services we can offer you, supplier engagement, bespoke webinars on how to do business with the primary contractors. You can attend our various exhibitions and Meet the Buyer events and connect with the local supply base. And most of all, working with STP, we're delighted to provide you with some data reporting and capitalise on the success stories and the good that comes out of these contract opportunities and working together. So now I'm going to talk a bit about top tips for tendering. There's several key areas which I think I'd like to focus on. The first one is about researching the market. Second part is about pre-planning, then looking at writing a winning tender, and then sustainability themes and tender library. One of the key things that I always say to suppliers is make the most of Public Contracts Scotland. There is a wealth of information in here, and while that's where you're going to identify contract opportunities, there's a lot of management information that you can look up and find out. So you can do your homework, you can research the buyers that are on there, and you can look at future opportunities. But also you can use it to plan your procurements and to schedule renewal dates and look for contact details from the buyers. And maybe even look at lesser known public buyers and find out about them. You can also use it for your competitor search, so you can understand if your competitors are winning contracts. Or maybe you want to use that as a supply chain opportunity and understand who's won what contract and how you can then get into the supply chain. There's also a tab for subcontracts on the Public Contract Scotland portal that you can look up and see what subcontracting opportunities have been published. So when we talk about organise and prepare your tender content, we understand that tendering it can be quite an onerous task, but if you start to prepare early and start to prepare your documents, we believe you can make this process simpler. So by creating a tender library and ensuring that you have the information already to hand regarding your references, your policies, details about sustainability and your technical and quality and health and safety, and about your people such as CVs, this can help smooth the process. So you can use PCS to search for the tender opportunities. You can also use that as a calendar to plan your bids as well. You can understand from the contract register when contracts are out, when they're going to be renewed. And you can look at how you can work with these organisations and plan the way forward. It's also super important that you look at results and feedback. So where you're winning tenders, why did you win that contract? What was your winning bid? Also looking at feedback for when you don't win and how you understand how you can improve your bid and go forward. Having a clear bid, no bid criteria is hugely important. There's hundreds of tenders published on PCS every day. So how do you make the most of them and keep up to date with them? Well, one of the things is to look at the contract and check all the minimum criteria. Can you actually meet that? Is that possible? Or are you going to have to rely on other entities to do that? Is this something you can deliver yourself, or will you need subcontractors and partners to do that? Is the contract divided into lots? Do you have sufficient turnover to apply for it? The location, maybe perhaps you're based in a certain location and you don't wish to travel out with that. Can you meet that requirement? Also looking whether there's any investment needed up front so you can manage your cash flow. Resources at the moment is obviously very topical within this COVID pandemic period. So do you have the resources for the job and for the bid? And then what's your track record with this client? Do you already have a track record? Have you got enough examples of how you can deliver this project too? And also consider your competitors. Who already out there is in the marketplace who may be bidding for this contract? Next stage is having a bid plan. One of the key things that we always advise suppliers is about writing content that is specific to the buyer's requirements. Make sure you read all the documents, the notice, the specifications, the terms and conditions, the evaluation criteria, and the instructions and invitation to tender documents so you're absolutely clear about it. And once you've read that once, we strongly recommend that you go back and revisit that again and read it again. Get your clarification questions in as soon as possible. Obviously, this can be done through the PCS and the PCST portal. So if you have a question, make sure you raise it. Also remember to check if somebody else has already asked the question. It may already be noted in there because it is a legal requirement that all questions are shared. Make notes of key elements of client requirements and brief your bid team and subcontractors so they understand what the outcomes are and what you are to deliver. Always recommend that you watch out for client terminology. If they're using particular words, it's good to repeat those words and use that within your response. Yeah, and generic answers will lose points. You have to make sure that you're specific to the contract. We've talked a bit earlier on about this contract and the need of how Scottish Government is looking very much to firmly focus on creating the right economic conditions to deliver a greener, fairer and more sustainable economy. So you need to be aware of the policies that are out there to support that. Fair Work First has now become 7 criteria where it was 5 before. The circular economy, how much do you know about that? And there's sources out there to help you, such as Zero Waste Scotland, who have a whole programme running about the circular economy. Net zero, this is playing a bigger role. STP is part of the Climate and Procurement Change Forum, and we're looking at how we roll out guidance and support to the supply base and how to tender for contracts and include your net zero policies. What will that look like? What is the ask? How are you going to report on that? And community benefits. What can you give back to the community as part of your contract and your bids? Remember, sustainability elements could be scored up to 15% of the tender. So what can you offer for this contract? Can it be measured? And do you have a method statement for delivery? Remember, this should be proportionate to the size and type of your organisation. And make use of support organisations for sustainability. As Alistair said earlier, BASE is there to help you connect into those communities. Remember again, generic answers will lose your point. So how do you keep up to date? Well, you can keep an eye on the STP website, look at our training to make sure you build and refresh your tender skills. As the policies change and update, we certainly update all our course materials to reflect that. So our courses can keep you up to date with that policy knowledge. Our Meet the Buyer and Aligned Tender training opportunities offer a unique point for suppliers to connect with buyers to understand the ask in the marketplace, understand future contracts coming up, and what ways they can work with them. So thank you very much for listening to my presentation today. I'm going to hand you back to Jennifer, and I do hope you found this session very beneficial.